had just finished my warm-up exercises when an urgent phone call came through. "Brother Tao, have you seen the news? That rich second-generation guy from the Lin family challenged to go diving alone, and now his life is hanging in the balance." Of course, I knew about this. According to the common practice in diving, when going underwater, there must be two people looking out for each other, but Richard, driven by the desire for online popularity, went into the water alone despite the warnings. Moreover, the Wo Fang cave he challenged is a place that no one else has successfully entered except me, as the name implies. The Wo Fang cave has a rugged surface with uneven rock formations stretching in a scattered yet orderly manner. It's nearly 7 kilometers in length, and the deepest part reaches 82 meters. The deeper one goes, the more difficult it is to squeeze through. Even someone like me, with 12 years of diving experience, almost lost my life there, let alone Richard, a young novice who had only been in the diving business for a year. The whole internet was closely following his live broadcast. However, 5 hours ago, his diving equipment accidentally dropped, and he got stuck at the bend of the cave. All the divers sent by the Lin family returned empty-handed. Because their skills weren't good enough to reach that far, there was no response to their calls either. Eager to save his son, Emma Ellen came to me and offered a large sum of money for the rescue. I calmly retorted, "If your son has passed away, or if an accident occurs during his return journey, will I be held responsible?" Judging from the last footage of his live broadcast, the place where he was trapped was the most perilous spot in the width. There only allowed one person to pass through at a time. More than 2 hours later, I finally reached the place where Richard was trapped. The oxygen in his tank was almost depleted. I quickly replaced it with a new one and then sent a message to Emma Ellen via the wireless device. When those on the surface learned that his son was still alive, there was a burst of cheers. I took out the grinder I had prepared beforehand. I chiseled away at the stones that were pinning down Richard's arm bit by bit. Due to the prolonged lack of blood circulation and oxygen deprivation, his entire arm had lost all feeling to prevent him from possibly losing his arm. I exerted more and more force, which meant the oxygen I consumed was running out faster and faster. Finally, after half an hour, Richard managed to free himself, just as I was about to lead him back. He quietly continued moving forward without a word. I quickly grabbed him and signaled with gestures that we had to turn back, but he shook me off and insisted on pressing ahead. The gist of his intention was that he had already completed half of the journey and couldn't give up halfway. Not to mention that the visibility at night was much poorer than during the day, and the deeper we went into the cave, the more intricate the path became. The oxygen tanks I bought simply could not last for such a long time. What's more, one of Richard's arms was unable to exert any strength. Seeing that I couldn't persuade him, I forcibly dragged him back. He then started struggling violently. He not only knocked my flashlight away, but also tried to tear off my oxygen mask. If we fought in that confined space, we'd surely get stuck again. If we needed to call in a rescue team, we could only find people from abroad. I couldn't be sure that I could hold on until then. I made some gestures to my companion, signaling for his help, and I pretended to give in. Taking advantage of Richard's inattentiveness, I knocked him out from behind. Although fainting underwater carried a high risk of causing cerebral palsy given the two difficult choices, I had no other option. I took out a rope and tied him to my feet. Moving with the extra weight was naturally more arduous than before. 2 hours later, I was completely exhausted, and the spare oxygen tank was also running low. With my last ounce of strength, I quickly and forcefully lifted Richard up. When I surfaced and got ashore, I felt an intense soreness all over my body, was dizzy, and felt nauseous. After recuperating in the hospital for several days, I gradually came to my senses. Richard was rescued in a timely manner, and his arm was saved. He woke up naturally after several days of calm. Lin, accompanied by major media reporters, fulfilled his promise and kept expressing his sincere gratitude. I thought the matter had finally come to an end, but 3 days after Richard woke up, the first thing he did was to accuse me of attempted murder in front of the media. His family had always been powerful and influential. The statement immediately caused a huge uproar across the internet. Countless media reporters swarmed into the ward. Fearing to miss out on the hot story with a pale face, Richard fabricated a lie in front of the camera. As is well known, the diver William is the first person in our country to break a world record. The Wolfang cave I entered this time is exactly the place where he achieved that world record in the past. So when he got into the water and saw me, his first reaction was to scold me for challenging his record. I know that diver William has an international competition coming up soon, and he definitely doesn't want anyone to steal his fame at this moment. I was actually only 1/3 away from completing the entire challenge at that time. As he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up more and more, exaggerated his face, which hadn't fully recovered yet, was filled with the determination to bring me down at that time. I still hadn't been discharged from the hospital. A large number of reporters rushed in again, and I was surrounded by countless microphones. Mr. Chen, do you agree with what the eldest son of the Lin family said? Did you really disregard other people's lives just to maintain your own record? I shook my head and revealed the truth to the reporters. If you can find other divers willing to go in, you'll naturally see a section of rocks at the corner that have been chiseled by hand. Our Ellen was extremely uncooperative at that time. If I had allowed him to keep going, he would surely have died. I had no choice but to knock him out. I've already reported these things to Mr. Ellen. As soon as I finished speaking, our Ellen stormed in furiously. He pointed at me and shouted, "Are you out of your mind? How dare you lay a hand on my son? No wonder you asked me before you went into the water whether you'd be responsible in case of an accident, sir. You actually wanted to kill him." His chest heaved violently, and several bodyguards beside him also glared at me with hostility. Richard set a trap for me and dragged the people around me into it. I saved him, but he repaid my kindness with ingratitude by accusing me of attempted murder. What else could I possibly say in my defense? There were only 3 of us underwater, and 2 of them testified against me, coupled with the Lin family's powerful influence that could manipulate everything. I had almost no chance of winning. I was quickly taken away by the police for investigation. These interviews also caused a great stir on the internet. Everyone was scolding me for being defaced. I remember he went diving with a student before, and that student ended up in a vegetative state, didn't he? At that time, he said he had tried his best to save the student. Maybe he deliberately framed the student when he found out the student was more capable than himself. It's so terrifying. My daughter learned diving from him before. Fortunately, nothing bad happened. What they said was indeed true, but that student, because he violated the regulations and went diving alone, had an issue with his oxygen tank. If I hadn't discovered it in time, he wouldn't have been able to survive. I finally understood when the public thinks highly of you. I'm a great hero, but when they turn against you, you're no better than a weed. The head coach let out a sigh, looking rather helpless. You know, being famous always brings a lot of troubles. The teams you're going to compete against this time are all formidable opponents from all over the world. If they bring you down, their chances of winning the award will increase significantly. And to be blunt, that son of the Lin family is a well-known playboy. He came to us looking for a private coach before and drove away several coaches by nitpicking. The reason he went diving this time was just to prove himself, but he couldn't hide the embarrassment of being stuck in the queue to save face. He had no choice but to make you take the blame. The police had already interrogated me once. It was very difficult to obtain evidence for this case, and their attitude was also ambiguous. After hearing what the coach said, I immediately broke out in a cold sweat. I had originally thought that as long as the police intervened, they would surely clear my name. But if Richard kept manipulating things behind the scenes, my life would be ruined. The head coach thought for a while and half comforted me. I'll go and negotiate an apology with Mr. Ellen first to ease their anger. At least that kid Richard is still alive. And if you show some humility, you might be able to get lenient treatment. Diving enthusiasts also came out to support their favorite athletes. Many people even accused me of cheating in the competition. They cursed that I had the blood of the innocent on my hands. No one cared about my clarification. Now everyone only believes what they want to believe, even the words of my colleagues. who had good relationship with me privately, were seen as an attempt to whitewash me. Major marketing accounts all joined in to stir up controversy. My coach, colleagues, family, and friends were all affected, seeing my family, who had once been proud of me, being constantly criticized by everyone every day. I couldn't bear it in my heart. In the end, I chose to return the money and voluntarily announced that I would never engage in diving again. This compromise of mine made everyone even more convinced that I was guilty, even though the police didn't find any solid evidence and had to release me. I was completely stripped of my diving license. On the day I was released from the detention center, the father and son of the Lin family deliberately brought reporters to surround me. Obviously, he had been begging me with tears in his eyes to save his son at that time. Afterwards, he kept calling me Mr. Chen, and even said that he would offer a high salary to hire me as his son's coach. But I didn't expect that Richard still didn't let me go. He brazenly showed off on the internet that my actions at that time were not up to the standard. It's hard to imagine that a person like him could break a world record. Immediately, some netizens who claimed to be my students jumped out and said that all the techniques I taught them were wrong. There were also those who had partnered with me and said that I had stolen their credits. Several times some even said that every time I went diving, I made my teammates explore the way and didn't care about their lives. Everyone was shouting that my reputation should be completely destroyed to prevent me from changing my name in the future and continuing to cause harm. I found Thomas, who had become Richard's private coach. He spread his hands and told me to let go of the matter. You know, there's something going on in my family, and I'm in urgent need of money, so he wouldn't help me clear my name even if the people around me knew that I was wronged. It didn't make any difference. In the face of the current public opinion, I had no better option than to lie low. I flew to a small city with my previous savings. I registered a new account, and my daily routine was to explain some diving knowledge without showing my face. Gradually, I gained some popularity, and I could make enough money from advertising fees each month to make a living until a year later. I received another phone call from Ellen. Richard was trapped in that cave again. This time, he was well prepared, and his oxygen tank was sufficient. 3 days had passed since the accident occurred. The rescue experts hired from abroad, due to their unfamiliarity with the area, failed to succeed with several rescue plans. The voice on the other end of the phone was choked with sobs, and the tone was panicked. I definitely won't blame you this time. Before he could finish speaking, I hung up the phone directly. How could I possibly believe the words of a capitalist? That afternoon, while I was editing a video, there was a sudden knock on the door. Looking through the peephole, I saw Ellen leading a large group of people standing imposing right behind him. It seemed that I had no choice but to open the door. Is it that rich second-generation guy who wanted to break the record last time? I heard that he specifically trained for a year before going down this time. He's so arrogant. He was trapped once but still didn't learn his lesson. Didn't this William try to murder his son? Why is he coming to him again? I didn't want my peaceful life to be disrupted again. I quickly put the card back. It's not that I don't want to save him, but I don't have the qualification to do so now. Then there were whispers, a discussion around. That's right. I heard that all of William's certificates have been revoked. This person is really bold, RNT. They afraid that William will actually take some revenge on his son with some underhanded tricks. Hey, what do you know? I think there must be some hidden truth about what happened last year. If William were really like what they say, he couldn't have had such a glorious career for so many years. Who knows what kind of underhanded things the capitalists are doing behind the scenes? You're right. If they were really enemies, it would be even more unreasonable for them to come and ask him for help now. Didn't another diver testify against him at that time? Could this matter really be false? Ooh. Anyone can give false testimony. Besides, didn't the police find any solid evidence? If there was really a problem, how could they let William go? Hearing these discussions, Mr. Lin felt a bit embarrassed. He urgently said to me, Mr. Chen, there might have been some misunderstanding about you in the past now. I really can't find anyone else. You're the only one familiar with that area. Please help us one more time. I only have this one son. If he dies, I won't be able to live either." As he said this, he was about to kneel down and count out at me. The reporters immediately raced their cameras to film. I quickly helped him up. "I've already said it's not that I don't want to, but I really can't save him." As if he had thought of something, Ellen quickly assured me, "Don't worry. I will definitely restore your diving license. Will also compensate you for your reputation and do my best to clear your name. Is a certain amount of money okay? Another amount of money is also possible." He was as desperate as he was last year in front of me. He was just a flustered and helpless father. I still pressed my lips together and didn't agree. Some neighbors couldn't stand it anymore. Didn't they say it was a misunderstanding, since human life is at stake? Does he really that narrow-minded? If he saves young Master Lin this time, he will surely be grateful to him. He asks, not that spineless. Come on. If you're so full of compassion, you go and save him. His future was ruined by them, and they still want him to save their son? What if the Lin family plays some dirty tricks again this time? Ellen said to the camera that this time, no matter what accident occurred, the Lin family would take full responsibility. He looked at me with eager and pleading eyes. I let out a sigh. I can't go into the water anymore. Everyone was stunned. Ellen couldn't believe it even more. He quickly added, "Don't worry. I'll provide you with the best equipment, and you can bring anyone you want to go down with you. They can no longer be competent for diving for some reasons." There. When Ellen heard these words, it was like being struck by lightning, and he almost fell to the ground instead. The neighbors began to feel sorry for me. Damn, these things weren't revealed at that time. William sacrificed his own career to save his son, and it was clearly stated above that my physical functions were no longer suitable for diving deeper than 15 meters. Last time, in order to save your son, he had a conflict with me and damaged my diving equipment, which affected my health. Don't worry. I'll provide you with the best equipment, and you can bring anyone you want to go down with you, even if you haven't been in the water for a year. I believe that with your experience, you could get used to it quickly. But these words didn't stir the slightest ripple in my heart anyway. Linz had never trusted me. He simply couldn't be bothered to explain further, and waved my hand to shoo him away. When Ellen saw that there was no hope, his hypocritical mask couldn't be hidden anymore. He flew into a rage and ordered the bodyguards to drag me out. Even if I go into the water, he'll be dead before I can reach him. I don't care. Even if you die, you must bring my son back to me. Ellen roared without any dignity. Couldn't stand it and began to criticize him for his inhumane behavior. Just then, Thomas pushed through the crowd and came forward. He looked at me with guilt and then testified to the reporters. I took Richard's money and deliberately slandered Brother Tao. Thomas bowed deeply to me. Sorry, I really shouldn't have smeared you for money. Over this past year, I've come to see Richard's true colors. She doesn't treat us ordinary people as human beings at all. In his eyes, I'm just a dog. What should we do? Such a despicable person's true face should have been exposed long ago. It's the Lin family's company that should really be shut down. The public was enraged, and Ellen didn't dare to stay any longer. Under the protection of the bodyguards, he slunk away. Richard still hadn't been rescued. An intense public opinion storm had already risen on the internet. This time, it was all directed at the Lin family. Anyway, at least from now on, I can hold my head up high. He still owes me an apology. With my guidance, the divers entered the cave more smoothly than before. It was still a different matter compared to having my own experience. I encountered a lot of difficulties along the way. For hours later, they finally found Richard's location. He had gone to kilometers further than last time. They were still stuck in the crevice of the rock. I shouted at the divers to stay away. Before we could react, Richard swam forward again. Everyone was stunned by his action. The divers desperately pulled at him to signal him to stop. But Richard refused without even thinking. He knew that the story from a year ago was about to repeat itself. This time, he was only 3 kilometers away from the destination. But he had forgotten that his son couldn't hear him. At this moment, the cave collapsed further. The passage that could allow people to pass through was blocked. Richard and the divers were completely separated. If Richard couldn't reach the end successfully, he wouldn't be able to come back the same way either. After I stated this conclusion, Mr. Lin collapsed to the ground. I asked the divers to throw the waterproof headset to Richard. I'll teach him how to swim out of the last section of the cave. But, in the last footage captured by the camera, Richard made a gesture of refusal. Since he was so obstinate, I really didn't have any better solution. There were still 15 curved caves ahead. Given his current physical strength and blind confidence, it was very difficult for him to make his way out. Moreover, due to the special structure this time, there was no way to directly break through the cave. All the experts calculated that if they forced it any further, the entire cave would collapse. The only way was to saw off Richard's leg. Compared to losing his life, this was already a relatively good solution. But this proposal was quickly rejected. Performing surgery underwater was extremely difficult, and no one could guarantee that he wouldn't die from massive bleeding. Mr. Ellen was completely driven crazy. He put on his diving suit and was about to go down to find his son. He couldn't even fit through the first cave entrance because he was too fat. Finally, he was dragged out by the divers and almost lost his life at the same time. The public opinion on the internet reached its peak. Everyone unanimously believed that they shouldn't waste so many public resources on a person who wasn't worth it. The opponents of the Lin family took the opportunity to act, causing several stock markets to crash. With the breakage of the capital chain, Mr. Ellen could no longer gather those excellent divers. In the end, he was left alone on the land. As the sun set and the moon rose, day by day passed, and the topics about the Lin family gradually lost their heat. Another month had passed since Richard was trapped. I didn't know if he was still alive. In the endless darkness, I wondered if he ever regretted having given up his freedom so many times with his own hands. I opened the live broadcast room and continued my online teaching.